Who is the greatest rebel in the history of football? If you ask a casual fan, they might say Maradona for his defiance of the establishment, or perhaps Eric Cantona for his outspoken nature. But there is a name that has been systematically thinned out of the official archives. A man who achieved the impossible on the pitch, only to be met with a calculated silence from the highest offices of power. This is the story of Carlos Caszely. A man who didn't just play for a trophy, he played for the soul of a nation. And in doing so, he became the only player in history that a brutal dictatorship tried to physically and metaphorically delete from existence. But before we get to the moment that changed everything, the moment he stood face to face with a tyrant, we have to understand the shadow that was falling over Chile in 1973. The ghost match and the blood-stained grass. Imagine walking into a stadium where you've scored dozens of goals. You know every blade of grass, the echo of every corner. But today, the air is different. It doesn't smell like popcorn and excitement. It smells like fear. In 1973, the Estadio Nacional in Santiago was no longer a sports venue. It was a prison. Following the military coup led by General Augusto Pinochet, the locker rooms became torture chambers. The stands where families once cheered were filled with thousands of political prisoners. Chile had to play a World Cup qualifier against the Soviet Union. The Soviets, knowing what was happening inside those walls, refused to travel. They said they would not play on a pitch soaked in the blood of the innocent. FIFA, in a display of what many call its darkest hour of complicity, sent inspectors. They walked the pitch while prisoners were hidden in the tunnels below, bayonets at their backs. FIFA declared the stadium fit for play. What followed was the most surreal scene in football history. The Chilean team took the field against an invisible opponent. They kicked off, passed the ball among themselves, and walked it into an empty net. The crowd cheered a ghost goal. But while his teammates celebrated a hollow victory, Carlos Caszely stood there looking at the stands. He knew people were dying beneath his feet. He knew that the game he loved was being used as a mask for a monster. And it was in that moment that the king of the square meter decided he would no longer just be a player. He would be a witness. The handshake that never happened, fast forward to 1974. The Chilean national team is about to depart for the World Cup in West Germany. This was a massive propaganda opportunity for Pinochet. He wanted to show the world a disciplined, successful Chile. He arranged a formal send-off at the Diego Portales building. The atmosphere was suffocating. Soldiers stood every few feet. The players were lined up stiff in their suits. General Pinochet entered, wearing his gray military cape and those infamous dark sunglasses that hid his eyes. He began to walk down the line, shaking hands, offering a cold, calculated smile to each athlete. Carlos Caszely was near the end of the line. He could hear the boots clicking on the floor. He could see the dictator getting closer. His teammates were sweating. To refuse a handshake from Pinochet wasn't just rude. In 1974, Chile, it was a potential death sentence. When Pinochet reached Caszely, he extended his hand. The hand that had signed the orders for the caravan of death. The hand that had ended Chilean democracy. Caszely didn't move. He deliberately placed his hands behind his back. He looked straight ahead, his chin slightly up, refusing to even acknowledge the dictator's presence. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Pinochet's face turned a deep shade of red, his hand hanging in the air for a second that felt like an eternity. He moved on to the next player without a word, but everyone knew. Caszely had just declared war on the state. The red card conspiracy. When the team arrived in Germany, the pressure didn't let up. The Chilean delegation was packed with security officers, DINA agents whose job was to ensure no one spoke out. Caszely was the primary target. He was the star, the man the cameras wanted to talk to. In the opening match against West Germany, something unprecedented happened. In the 67th minute, Caszely was sent off. He was the first player in the history of the World Cup to receive a red card. To the casual observer, it was a rough foul. But historians and those close to the team have long whispered a darker truth. The refereeing in that match was strangely aggressive towards the Chilean star. There are documented reports of political pressure being exerted on the tournament organizers to neutralize the rebel striker. If he was off the pitch, he couldn't score. If he couldn't score, he wasn't a hero. And if he wasn't a hero, his defiance at the Diego Portales building would lose its power. The regime wanted him to look like a failure, a hothead, a liability to his country. But as Caszely walked off the pitch, he wasn't thinking about the game. He was thinking about home. Because while he was in Germany, the regime had decided to strike where it hurt most. They couldn't break the man, so they went for his mother. The price of silence. This is the part of the story that the official FIFA documentaries rarely mention. While Carlos was representing his country on the world stage, his mother, Olga Garrido, was kidnapped by the secret police. She was taken to a detention center. She was beaten. She was tortured. Why? Because her son didn't shake a hand. When Carlos found out, he was devastated. The guilt was a weight he would carry for the rest of his life. The regime wanted him to beg for forgiveness. They wanted him to come crawling back, to become a puppet for the dictatorship in exchange for his family's safety. But Olga was as strong as her son. When she was finally released, she told him, "Don't you ever stop. Don't you ever give them what they want." For the next decade, Caszely lived a double life. He was a superstar in Spain, playing for Levante and Espanyol, scoring goals that made him a legend in Europe. But every time he returned to Chile, he was met with a wall of silence from the state-controlled media. His goals were rarely shown on the news. His interviews were censored. The FIFA records of the time started to reflect a strange thinning of his achievements. He was becoming a ghost in his own time. The loop of the no by the late 1980s, Pinochet's grip on power was slipping. International pressure forced a plebiscite, a simple yes or no vote on whether he should stay in power for another 8 years. The Yes campaign had all the money, all the television stations, and the entire military behind them. The No campaign had 15 minutes of television airtime late at night. They needed a miracle. They needed a face that the people loved more than they feared the general. In a move that shocked the nation, the No campaign aired a segment featuring an elderly woman. She sat in a chair and spoke softly about the day she was taken. She described the pain, the darkness, and the fear. Then she said, "But I am voting no, because I want my children to live in a world where this never happens again." Then the camera moved. Sitting next to her, holding her hand, was Carlos Caszely. The impact was nuclear. The greatest footballer in Chilean history was standing with a victim of torture, his own mother, and telling the nation to be brave. It was the final goal of his career, and it was the most important one he ever scored. The no won. The dictatorship ended. The legacy of the erased. So why is Carlos Caszely not mentioned in the same breath as the other greats? Why did FIFA try to erase the context of his red card and his defiance? Because Caszely represents the one thing sports organizations fear most, a player who realizes that the game is smaller than the world. He was a man who understood that a goal is just a number on a scoreboard, but dignity is a legacy. He was the player who scored against a dictatorship and won. Today, Carlos Caszely is a hero in Chile, but his story remains a B-side to the rest of the world. It's a reminder that football is often used by the powerful to distract us, but in the hands of the brave, it can be a weapon for freedom. He was the king of the square meter. He was the man who refused the hand of a monster. And he is the player that history tried to erase, but the people refused to forget.